Good afternoon everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, the latest in a series of webinars that the LEAP Client Success team are presenting. The aim of these webinars is to help law firms improve the way they implement the features of LEAP in the cloud. My name is Marcus Whittington and I'm a LEAP Client Success Manager for LEAP users in Queensland and Northern New South Wales. Joining me today is Danny Lani from By Lawyers. And today's webinar will be focused on how firms can get the most out of the integration between LEAP and By Lawyers Guides and Precedents. As with all our educational webinars, this webinar will run for approximately 30 minutes and will be conducted in listen-only mode. Feel free to type any questions into the GoToWebinar questions feature throughout the duration of today's webinar. Although we may not be able to respond to you whilst we are presenting, we will collate all the questions into a frequently asked questions document, which will be sent out to you with a recording of today's webinar. We should note actually that all our webinars are recorded and available to you in the LEAP community and the LEAP YouTube channel. Today, you will learn about the practical use of By Lawyers precedents and commentaries, including how you can access reference manuals, and explain how you can easily keep up to date with changes to legislation, minimising the risk to your practice. We will also explain how different staff members within your firm can benefit from the By Lawyers Guides. So firstly, I would like to introduce you to Danny Lani from By Lawyers. Welcome, Danny, and perhaps you can help us with keeping up to date with legislation.
Hello, Marcus, and thank you for having me. Each year in Australia, there's approximately 200 bills which are introduced into Parliament. Around 90% of those are passed into law. As a result, taking the time to sift through and decide what's relevant for any given area of legal practice can be quite overwhelming. For law firms, allocating a chunk of their day to research those changes and ensure that the firm's existing precedents and research materials are compliant can present a major challenge. Keeping current with law and practice is vital though, so By Lawyers helps practitioners deliver high quality work and we help them mitigate their liability risks. By Lawyers can help save time for firms by providing ready access to legislation and to commentary. We can also help you make really good impression on new and existing clients because you're always up to date. You know exactly what's happening in the law. We can also help maintain your reputation in the marketplace by minimising those risks. Last year's introduction of the foreign resident capital gains tax withholding for sales over 2 million is a really good example of this. And that looks like it's set to change too, by the way, under the budget that came out last week. Looks like the withholding rate's going to change from 10% up to 12.5%, and contract prices are going to reduce from 2 million to 750,000. So looks like we're all going to be pretty busy. The By Lawyers Guides are continuously updated by practicing solicitors, barristers and conveyancers. And so between us, we make sure that everything you're accessing is current and up to date.
Thank you, Danny. From the By Lawyers integration with LEAP, you have access to over 6,000 legally drafted precedents, which are contained in over 130 guides. Each guide contains commentaries written in a plain language, which are available directly from your LEAP matter whilst you're working. By Lawyers provide content for common areas of law, such as conveyancing, family law and wills and estates, but also for some less common areas, such as defamation, PPSR and bankruptcy. So, Danny, I'd like to just share with you that I receive questions from firms that I visit about how the various roles at firms might make use of the publications. And I would like to ask you how would a principal utilise the guides?
Well, for principals and partners, they can minimise risk, and that's a major one. By using and having available those matter plans in the office, principals and partners can ensure consistent and standard practices throughout the office. Every step is outlined. Whether somebody follows it or not is another thing, but it ensures that nothing is overlooked, everything's considered. Those plans provide cues for what's coming next, commencing with the initial letters, cost agreements, retainer instructions. They all ensure that the matter gets underway properly, works all the way through the matter to finalisation when you do the final letters and the invoices, most important bit, the invoices off to the client. They're also a good training tool and allow principals and partners to empower their staff.
And speaking of the staff, what about the lawyers and the paralegals?
Well, they can work far more independently. They don't need to be knocking at the door and waiting for the solicitor to help them. They can actually work their way through those matter plans. And if they want to know more, they can click on the commentary links, which puts research materials at their fingertips. They can also spend more time working on the actual matter itself, less on administration.
And could you tell us how the guides can assist the bookkeeper?
Well, bookkeepers can make great use of the practice and procedures manuals because there's ready access there to all the office forms that they need. Office forms like petty cash vouchers, reconciliation sheets, those sorts of things. They also have links to throughout Australia, all the Law Society trust forms. So come end of year when they need to report on the signatories of the trust account and external examiner reports, that's all there and really easy to access.
And standard procedure is very important, so how about the office manager?
Well, the office manager needs to be confident that they're providing access to all the latest materials for the staff. They can also be confident that there's extensive libraries of precedents and research materials, again, all easily accessible. The practice management guide also gives those office managers access to forms such as interviewing new staff, position descriptions, leave requests, staff review forms, those sorts of things. There's also a policy and procedures manual, and that allows staff to get easy advice to a range of things such as how to handle a complaint and how to answer the telephone properly.
And finally, Danny, how would support staff and the receptionist make use of the guides?
Well, support staff, again, they follow the guide through. They know exactly what's happening in the matter. They can also make good use of the comprehensive to-do list. They're great. Steps everything out, they can tick things off, and the supervising solicitor can know where they're up to and what they've done so far. The receptionist, well, they can prepare retainer instructions, have them available, so when clients come in to be interviewed by a solicitor, they're there ready to go. The receptionist can also ask the clients to perhaps fill in the contact details at the start while they're waiting for the solicitor. Once the client leaves the completed retainer instruction, the receptionist can use those to get the matter started and do all those initial things like file cover sheet and perhaps even draft the initial letters.
Thank you, Danny. Well, it's really interesting to see how easily firms can introduce standard procedures throughout the whole office, as well as appreciate how all the staff within a firm can use the guides and gain the resulting benefits. So let's review some guides. And today we will focus on 3 areas of law. Let's start with conveyancing. To access the By Lawyers Precedent directly from the matter you are working on, so let's open up our conveyancing file there. You click on the Guides and Precedents button. Now in this example, we are looking at a conveyancing purchase file for New South Wales. Feedback from our clients suggests that the easiest and most effective way to navigate around the guides is from the Legal Guides tab. However, you can utilize the precedents only from the Browse tab. From Legal Guides, you will see a well-organized structure of how to run a matter in this area of law, with all the commentary, forms and precedents presented in a sequential structure. The links in green are to the commentary and the links in blue to the precedents and forms. Remember, these are drafted by practicing lawyers, conveyancers and barristers. At the top of the page, here you will see an alert. Alerts are designed to give you the heads up that there have been recent changes that you need to be aware of. In this example, the alert in the guide is advising that requisition fees were introduced from the 1st of January 2017. Depending on the type of alert, these may appear for a brief period or sometimes a little longer. The commentaries can be read online or printed out. They are practice-based rather than academic and written in plain language so that no matter who is utilizing the guides, they can easily understand what they are reading the first time that they read it. Now sometimes you may not want to read the whole commentary. Say you just want to review the latest information about stamp duty. Well, by clicking on the chapter heading there, this will bring you straight from the table of contents to the relevant section. Throughout the commentary, there are hyperlinks to legislation and, where necessary, to government departments, as well as case law. So here we have section 9B. We'll open that up and it takes us straight to the Duties Act 1997 section of the New South Wales Consolidated Acts. Back to LEAP and the Legal Guides tab, and you can see that the chapter headings for the entire publication are interdispersed through the various stages of the matter. All the guides also contain legally drafted precedents that you might possibly need in order to conduct your matter. Looking at the Getting the Matter Underway heading, probably the most important thing to do at the start of every matter is to take good instructions. Retainer instructions are great for taking instructions as they cover all of the questions that a solicitor needs to ask during that initial interview with your client. Now, whether it is the first time you have undertaken such a matter or the 1000th time, retainer instructions provide a management tool that streamlines the process, ensures a readily accessible trail, and provides an excellent file note of the interview. You can see here that the topic details are prompts for all the important things that you would need to consider for a matter, such as identifying your client, the GST and the land tax, etc. You can complete the document online and save it into the matter directly, or scan and save the handwritten copy. Back in LEAP, I just want to let you know that consistent systems and processes are important to running a successful practice. Cost agreements and initial letters are available in all of the guides. Simply click on the blue links and the precedent will open from your matter. Like all letters in LEAP, your letters will merge with the relevant information onto your letterhead. You can, of course, amend any of these precedents to personalize them for your firm. In this particular guide, we'll just minimize the Getting the Matter Underway. The next folder of the contract provides more information. It is probably the most important consideration for this particular legal transaction. Now, whilst the purchaser does not prepare the contract, research materials are handy, and there is a library of other contracts and agreements which may prove useful, such as the Granny Flat Agreement. Moving through the guide to the mid-transaction, you can access precedents dealing with a range of necessary tasks at this stage of the matter, as well as some unusual ones. Take, for example, the If Required Uncommon Transfers. Well, this folder contains precedents for the old system or by an executor or an administrator. There are precedents also dealing with strata and community title, as well as a library of common land and duty forms and declarations. If required is something that you'll come across, and these are available throughout all of the guides. They signify steps that aren't necessary every time, but are used occasionally. In this instance, it is, if required, claims, disputes, and notices. And the folder contains commentary on these topics, as well as a large library of notices. Every guide contains documents to finalize your matters, ensuring that both you and your client know that the end has arrived and it is time to invoice the client. The letter to purchaser after settlement advises your client that you have completed everything you were retained to do. Let's now take a look at a family matter in LEAP. Open that one up there, selecting the Guides and Precedents at the top of the toolbar. And because of that matter type, well, it is now selected as to the relevant guide of the property settlement, and this is automatically made available to you. If you were after a different family law guide, you can easily change by clicking on the drop-down arrow here in the top right, next to the title of this guide, Property Settlement. You can select here from other family law matters such as divorce, financial agreements, children, and the reference manual for 101 family law answers. Reference manuals are deeper research materials that stand behind many of the commentaries. These reference manuals provide answers to some of the more complex questions. Reference manuals are available in conveyancing, family law, subpoenas, and coming soon, estates and succession law. Now I'd like to show you something that is particularly useful, a useful table for the use of the junior lawyer or the paralegal, because many of the guides contain other useful information as well. And here, under the Getting the Matter Underway tab, we can find this table of indicative property settlement division. And this is a useful guide for the juniors as it provides some useful indications about what are considered short, medium, and long-term marriages. It discusses the potential treatment of various contributions based on small and large asset pools. Family law matters come under the federal jurisdiction, and you can see that By Lawyers have provided cost agreements which are relevant to each state and territory. And this is because, although similar, there are subtle differences between the legal profession uniform law in each state. Moving through the matter plan and to this folder here, Settling It Early, well, this is a frequently used section by law firms as it helps warring parties to come to sensible solutions and to document those into consent orders which can then be filed in the registry of the family court or the local court. Alternatively, the precedent financial agreements can also be used. Within this folder, there is also a library of family orders, which cover orders for property, general, children, and superannuation. You have access to over 100 orders in this library. The guide also deals with those matters which end up in court, whether it be the Federal Circuit Court or Family Court. The matter then concludes and final letters and invoices are available. You will also see at the end of this guide and all the guides that there is further information section which contains links to other useful information. Now, if you're in a particular matter type and want to check on another guide, you can easily do so from the matter by clicking on the drop-down menu up here in the top right again. Now in this instance, we're going to select Browse More Guides, and we're going to search through the Companies, Trusts, Partnerships and Superannuation, and let's take a look at the Corporation General. This is a popular guide and contains useful information and particularly a useful table which facilitates a comparison between the various business structures. We can find that here in our Getting the Matter Underway and the Business Structures table. Now this comparison is between those various business structures in relation to such issues as the income tax, as well as capital gains tax and asset protection. You will also see there are shareholder agreements and other deeds and contracts essential to practice in this area of law. Earlier, Danny discussed how a bookkeeper or office manager could utilize standard account and office forms, including processes to help interview and induct staff. To utilize these forms and guidance, go back up to the top right here, click towards the Browse More Guides, Practice Management and Administration, and if you want to search any of the guides, you have this search button here in the top right. So in this instance, you may want to quickly locate forms for a new employee. Simply type in what you need to find, and it will bring you to the first available document within the guide. And the search function gives you the ability to use this next feature as well, taking you to the next most relevant document. So as I mentioned before, there are over 130 guides written by lawyers that are available through LEAP. The authors really appreciate feedback as it helps them to keep the publication relevant for you. So there are 3 ways that you can provide feedback. The first is within the By Lawyers Matter Plan itself. So back in that top right section, using that drop down, you can see that you have feedback available from this space. Secondly is within a document itself. So I'll just open up one of our letters, and you can see in the top LEAP ribbon that we have Provide Feedback button here. So you can provide direct feedback for this particular document. And the third and final way is by contacting By Lawyers via email. So please do send your feedback through to support@bylawyers.com.au. So Danny, what type of feedback do you receive from our clients, and how quickly can By Lawyers respond?
Thanks, Marcus. We receive feedback from all three methods, but probably the most popular one is the email. If it relates to a precedent request, then we usually email back. But if it relates to something which needs more clarification, then we would normally give you a ring, because it's so much easier to demonstrate something when you're speaking directly to that person. Oh, and by the way, we respond to feedback usually within 24 hours.
That's great to hear, Danny. Well, let's take a look at some questions and answers and perhaps some feedback that we've received from today's webinar. So Danny, the first question I have here is from Joseph from Melbourne, and he has commented that he has seen the guides and finds them quite simple.
Okay, thanks, Joseph. Look, there's many complex documents available to you in the guides: trusts, shareholders agreements, mortgage-backed loan agreements, leases, etc. But the letters and the more straightforward precedents are in plain language, in line with the plain language philosophy expressed by Justice Michael Kirby in his article Plain Language. And that's an article which is a recent addition to our articles library. We also hope to reproduce his more recent address at the Clarity Conference late last year. And the title of that is Clarity in Legal Language in English, Is It Possible? I'm looking forward to reading that one.
I also have a question from Julius from Sydney, a similar question about simplicity, but is particularly interested in leasing. Perhaps, Danny, you can go into a little more detail here.
Okay, leases. By Lawyers produces leases in retail, commercial, industrial, and rural. Retail leases in particular, it's a highly regulated environment, so we need to be sure that everything complies with the applicable retail lease legislation. You'll find all of our leases contain the normal covenants found in commercial leases, with provision with the, for putting in extra covenants which are particular to circumstances. They're very user-friendly.
Danny, I have a question from Michael from Adelaide, and he has asked how often the guides are updated.
Well, that's an easy one. Because the guides are written by practicing barristers, conveyancers and solicitors, they're actually using the guides in their own practice. So we have a saying in our office that if it's new in the law, it's new in By Lawyers. A good example of that is on the 1st of May this year in Victoria, the powers of attorney legislation was amended and came into force on that day. Monday morning, May 1, everybody in your office had access to the very latest forms. They had commentary material there that they could read in case they weren't sure about something. And there was also a really good article by Ros Curnow, a Victorian practitioner, who did a comparison on the old and the new and what it actually meant. It was good. It was terrific.
Danny, I have a question from Bethany from my hometown of Brisbane, and she has asked if there is a guide available for criminal law.
Yes, in Queensland there is a criminal law guide. It was written by James McNabb, he's a barrister, and Evan Cooper, solicitor from Southport, I think. It was also recently reviewed by Carolyn McEwen, she's also a barrister. And I think it's really important to make the point that the publications were written by people in that state. The criminal law guides are available in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and also soon South Australia.
Another question from Anthony from Parramatta. Anthony has asked for a little more information about the By Lawyers contract for sale of land and if anyone can use it.
Yes, they can. It's in New South Wales, the By Lawyers contract for sale of land, and it came out in 2015. And it was produced as an alternative to the Law Society contract. And of course it's free to everybody who is using By Lawyers. Its use is growing steadily, and a lot of people, we're getting feedback that they really like the ease with which it can be electronically exchanged. In the contract itself, we've replaced requisitions with warranties. We've incorporated all the usual special conditions in the contract, so you don't have to put those on. You only have to actually put in special conditions. We've rationalised the remedies, And we've made many other improvements too, while still dealing with all the issues which are covered historically in the Law Society contract.
Thanks, Danny. A common question that seems to be coming through from the audience today is who are the authors?
Okay, the authors. Well, there's about 40 in all who've contributed to the Guides and Precedents. You can see a full list of them on the website, www.bylawyers.com.au. Just click on the Obiter blog when you get there, and you'll see the full list. I think, you know, it's really important, whether it's a Queensland conveyance or a Tasmanian estate or a Victorian criminal matter, the publications were written by practicing people in those states. So you're not getting, there's no crossover there. You're getting real commentary from real people in your state. That's important to know.
It is, thank you. And finally, Danny, I might take this one. Marion from Newcastle has commented here that she has used the precedent before, but sometimes would like to modify them for specific use in other matters. Well, the By Lawyers precedents can be easily amended in LEAP. Some firms like to make their precedents a little more formal or less formal, depending on their practice. I might just note here that it's best to duplicate the precedent, then modify it and rename it. And that way you can be using your own modified precedent, but you can always refer back to the By Lawyers original and keep abreast of all those updated changes to the legislation there. So we encourage you actually from the Client Success team to tune into the precedent automation webinars, both introduction and advanced, available from the LEAP YouTube channel. Okay, so we might conclude our question time there, and I might just let you know that By Lawyers is a companion product to LEAP, and there are over 3,000 firms utilising the guides to keep up to date with those changes to legislation and consistency over the practice. Danny, thank you very much for your time today. It's been great having you here.
Thank you, Marcus.
You're welcome. And thank you for joining today's webinar. And should you have any questions about LEAP or would like to request topics for future webinars, please email clientsuccess@leap.com.au. As always, should you need support or require further information on LEAP, please utilise the live chat from the LEAP community or email support@leap.com.au. Thank you again.